Hi there, everybody. Matt Lawton here. This is the Astrological Wings channel. I'm going to take a look at the astrological weather report for the week of April 28th through May 4th, and also the month of May, because we got a pretty mellow week, not a lot going on this week, and actually not a real lot in May either, so it's easy to get both of them done together. So this week we've got Venus going back into Aries, and we also have Venus then going to immediately conjunct Neptune in Aries. And then also one of the big things of the month this week, Pluto going retrograde. Also this month, Jupiter is square the nodes coming up, and Saturn making a big shift going into Aries for the first time, and it'll go back into Pisces and then back into Aries next year again for a couple years. So just real quick, little information here. It's really funny, some people tell me that, why do I give information at the beginning of the blog? Why don't I wait until the end? And other people are actually hitting me and asking me why I don't give information on how to get readings. So I do need to do a little at the beginning. So the Astrological Wings channel is a free video blog that I do every week on YouTube. Been doing it for many years now. It was a podcast before that, and it's a free service. What I'd really like you to do is pass that link along as soon as you're done with it to somebody else to pay me back for it. A lot of people watching these days. And also, if you do have a YouTube account, I'd like you to become a follower if you're watching it regularly, and don't forget to turn your notifications on when you do that so that you know when the blog is posted. Also, it is available on podcasts still too. Just look up Astrological Winds channel on podcasts on your podcast app. You should be able to find it out there on something, for sure. And if you have Instagram, Astrological Winds channel also has its own Instagram page, and I do post the link to the blog in the newsreel of that every week. Sometimes do extra comments there too. And then the other place you can always find it is www.astrologicalwinds.com, not channel, it's just winds.com on the website. And there is a tab on the top for the blogs, and you can not only find the current one, but you can find them going back 3 months, on the weeklies at least, the monthlies for about a year, and the annual one, and any other special ones I've done. You can also find my calendar tab up there, where every week I should give some of the Earth calendars that Earth holidays going on. Um, and that's also for you people who are asking me where to get information on readings. That's the place to go. My website has my menu there and the pricing. I can work with you on payments with the pricing if it's a little too much to put out right away. All kinds of different readings too. And I've been doing them professionally for over 20 years. So if you're ready for that, or you know someone who's ready for that, please get in touch. There's a email link on the website, or just it's matthue823 at gmail.com. And I'm sorry if you don't like the infomercials, but I literally do have people ask me every week where the information is to get a reading. So I'm going to have it a little bit at the beginning every week. You're going to have to grin and bear it, or you're going to have to hit your fast forward if you don't want to hear it. And I will have more information on the end on that stuff too. All right. So this week, like I said, not a really super active week nor month. One of the first things I'd like to point out is we had that really intense Mars Pluto opposition all week last week, and it really did come out, didn't it? In society, in particular, really played out with Russia increasing its attacks and destructive attacking on Ukraine at a time when the president of the United States thought he was like going to be able to negotiate out of this war, war that we're not really even, involved in directly anyway in the United States. So this really is a great showing of like the destructive force of Mars Pluto, how it can get really intense, really violent, and the people that are making those decisions, and that are affecting a lot of people, and the power tripping that even goes on, and the manipulating even underneath the violence, how, between the different leaders of the countries, how it's really gotten back and forth, and it's been pretty cantankerous, and a lot of accusations, not a lot of harmony and peace really going on. And it shows, Mars Pluto, shows how everyone is hell-bent on getting their way, and to the point of destructive energy. And so we really got a great example of that last week in that energy. Now this week got three main things going on, but I want to mention one other thing first, and that happens tomorrow on Tuesday, or at least it's exact then. I don't talk about the asteroids very much, and the four major asteroids I do use a bit, mainly because in the blog they're not as important as the planets, and they don't have as much significance as the planets. But occasionally, if one of the outer planets hits the one of the four main asteroids in a fourth harmonic aspect or less, to me that can, we can feel something like that. And this week on Tuesday we have Saturn trining the asteroid Juno. And the asteroid Juno, it just represents really, basically on a general level partnership, just really a one-on-one relationships is another way, a good general description of what Juno's energy represents. And if you remember, like, last week, we had Venus conjuncting Saturn the last time, and it had done that three times during the whole retrograde period. And I mentioned multiple times during that period how much it was about a reassessment of the reality of all our relationships, or many of our relationships anyway, and trying to figure out which ones have stability for us, have reliability for us, and wanting to, focus on them, and then ones that actually restrict us too much, and like starting to create some distance in them, at least emotionally. And so, like, I think this Saturn trine Juno really plays right into that energy. If we've been doing this assessment, this energy now wants to take the ones that we have decided are reliable, right? And build more structure and form into them, get tighter with that person and that relationship, and in a way that you feel like there's like more loyalty, there's more commitment to you. And once again, trying to build something that lasts a long time, that's going to have value for both you and the other for a long time, and this can even go beyond one-on-one relationships with an individual. It could even be your individual relationship with some group or association with something like that. Once again, too, just like the Venus Saturn conjunction, which I've mentioned once again several times in the last few weeks, it favors relationships that are more business-like, that are not very emotional, right? That are more based on serious commitment. And so this is really a great time to try to find people to form partnerships with that are like business or financial type partnerships in particular, because they can be stable, they can be long term, right? This is really helping those non-emotional relationships, and many times they can be more reliable relationships because emotion has been taken out. Emotion many times can make relationships very unstable, right? So this is just once again a great representation of the astrology working together, how one aspect is working with others or handing off what it's done to the next part of the relay of our continuing life story unfolding, which is really what the aspects are showing. And that's why, you should get a predictive reading if you every year in your own chart, to see how these aspects are unfolding for you, and doing that for you. So once again, very very interesting energy blending there. And then right on Wednesday, speaking of Venus, she goes back into Aries. And so Venus has left Aries back on March 26th. If you'll remember, during the retrograde period, it started in Aries, went backwards into Pisces on March 26th, a sign that Venus actually really likes to be in, is exalted in, and kind of took some of the edge off of the Venus retrograde for us, whether we're aware of that or not. And now it's going back into a sign it actually doesn't like to be in very much. It doesn't vibe very well. Venus and Aries. Venus and Aries is we can get too pushy in our relationships. We can get tactless. We can get insensitive to what we want in relationships to the point where we're not aware of the effects that we're having with what we're doing within the context of relationships and how that's affecting other people. And when we're too pushy and we're getting too insensitive, we actually can torpedo our own efforts at trying to get closer to people. People will actually be driven away if they notice that you're not very sensitive to them. So even though we can be very social and outgoing with this energy, we are too wrapped up in wanting to do things the way we want to do. And therefore, many of our relationships can actually be very unsuccessful. We're really, when Venus is in Aries, we're really into our own independence and freedom, even though we're we're extroverted and we are initiating relationship, right? We're very still driven by our own independence within those frameworks, and we will back away or run away from anyone who's feeling who pushes us too deep too quickly. The funny thing is, though, Venus in Aries is very quick to initiate any kind of contact, including romantic contact. But in general, our relationships on the romantic level can be very stormy during this time. This is the time when Venus is in Aries. A lot of times, this is like, lovers and romantic partners, married people. This is many times where you can find yourself arguing a lot, disagreeing a lot with each other, and even in your close friendships, this can happen too. I mean, there's an imbalance going on when Venus is in Aries. There's an imbalance between the give and take in relationships. Like I said, Venus is in detriment when it's in Aries. It's in the opposite of in Libra, where it is very happy and is like always trying to find balance within relationships. We're not aware of that, or we're not seeking that at this time. And what's interesting about it too is because we are extroverted and we can be vivacious, we do still attract people to us, right? But it's people who like the kind of energy that we're putting out. It can drive away a lot of other people, but we're very, we do want to initiate, and sometimes that's even with difficult relationships. Many times Venus in Aries is ready for a debate, an argument, a battle, a fight, making a connection that, makes waves even. It really doesn't matter. Now, remember, Venus, also rules finances and money, and it's in a weak sign. So I would expect, it's going to be in Aries until June 7th. Remember, it's also in its shadow of its retrograde still. It's still not moving at full Venus speed yet. It won't be until about halfway through the month. So, point being is that I still think over the next month or 5 weeks, the economy is going to be very unstable under the influence of, like, individuals' actions, different countries' reactions. Where obviously, the president of the United States has started a tariff and trade war, and that's really affected the economy and finances. And so it's gonna be continued instability there. But in general, Venus in Aries is just saying, we're just too wrapped up in our own self to relate to others very well, even our loved ones. And then Friday, Venus conjuncts Neptune in Aries, which is really interesting because Venus really represents, human love, conditional love. I love you if you satisfy all these needs. Whereas Neptune represents unconditional love, like the Buddha. I love you despite, your faults and everything. I still love you. So the conjunction is blending those two energies together. And many times, this can set up something very beautiful in our lives. We can have some very idealistic or romantic moments in relationships or with life itself, with the experience we're having with life itself. This brings spirituality into our love. It brings like understanding, empathy, compassion into our love, and we can give that to ourselves and we can give it to each other. So, yes, we can feel like we're making these very deep soulmate soul union connections under this energy because of that. And it can feel like, like we like our ideals are being appealed to, but we have to be really careful too, because we can be setting ourselves up for disappointment. Because let's face it, ideals are just ideals, and when we get into relationships with other people, there's 8 billion of us on this planet. We're all different, and no one's gonna exactly meet your ideals 100%. So we have to be really careful about setting ourselves up for disappointments in what our dreams and fantasies are about what beauty and love is. In other words, we can actually make some bad choices because we may be feeling this energy, this merging of energy. But once again, like I said, it can be very beautiful. We can have some beautiful connections with others. Now, I said it before, Venus also rules money and finances. And with Neptune, once again, we have to be really careful about the decision making we're making with our finances right now. Okay. We can be really being misled. We can have poor judgment in relation to what's going on. So, this is not a good week to make big decisions with your finances either. Now, this does create, Neptune has a lot to do with Pisces too, which I said Venus had been in and, is now going back into Aries. But point being, Pisces is and Neptune and Venus, all three of them are very creative energies together. So this can actually give us a lot of creative inspiration too, a lot of artistic type inspiration, but it's passive energy still. It's kind of like seeding energy. So we may get the vision, we may get the insight, we may get the creative idea, but we may not be ready to actually put it into action quite yet. But I mean, this is energy where, the love really comes from a compassionate place, and we may be willing to, give charitably ourselves to others who need our help now, who have less than us. But we are seeking love on a romantic level that is, a merging kind of level of trying to merge energies together. So, because of that, we can be kind of a little bit on the innocent side and really mislead ourselves. So remember that. Then Sunday actually has the first, not only the last thing of the week I want to talk about, but the first thing of the month that's a big thing. And that is Pluto going retrograde, which will be until October 13th. And Pluto will go retrograde at 4 degrees of Aquarius. And because such a slow mover, will only retrograde back to about 1 degree of Aquarius by the 13th. Now, this is the first outer planet going retrograde this year. And remember, when the outer planets go retrograde, it's nothing like what we just went through with Mercury, Venus, and Mars going retrograde, because those three inner planets are affecting our daily life stuff, things we do every day that we expect to go a certain way. Whereas when the outer planets go retrograde, it's more of an abstract, subtle shift over a long period of time. And so when Pluto goes retrograde, more likely than not, the past 7 months, we were initiating a lot of new changes and transformation in our lives. And we saw that politically, right? When the new administration came in, they started to initiate a lot of transformation and changes, right? And so we saw that going on culturally and in society too. But now is when the reaction comes into all that stuff because it was intense, right? And so during this time, anything that we pushed individually in the last 7 months, or authorities pushed over the last 7 months on society, we're going to get the blowback is coming, right? Like people are going to see the reasons why you did that or why that happened in society, like things that may have been hidden, things that may have even been secretive, or just finally doing research and getting to the bottom of things and really understanding what was happening. So now the blowback comes on any power trips or power maneuvers that we pulled during that time. And we're going to see the effects of what we did, possibly in ways that we weren't really expecting or thinking that we might encounter when we were pushing that stuff to try to transform things. So we're going to likely see this played out very much so in society here in the United States, that there's going to be a lot of reaction in the next 5 months to the things that were administered by the new administration over the last few months. And there's going to be a lot of blowback reaction to that, courts, maybe people, whatever, different institutions reacting against that and, pushing back against those changes and those transformations. So, in other words, many of the birds are going to come home to roost for both us and society, based on what's happened and what we pushed in the last 7 months during the 5 months of Pluto retrograde. But like I said, it's subtle. It's going to be happening in the background. It's not going to be like in our faces all the time, but we're going to realize in our lives that a lot of things that we thought we were transforming and doing, that there's other things we need to take care of in order for that to move forward and happen again. So we got to go back and clean up a lot of our messes, so to speak. So, like I said, that was the first thing in May. The other two things I want to mention in May is on May 18th, Jupiter is going to square the nodal axis. And so what we need to be careful of with this one, both for ourselves and our own behavior, especially if we're feeling threatened in any way, like with resources, like many people are right now, or with people acting like this toward us, is like people wanting to take advantage of each other. This energy is like people literally feeling like they need to use other people and try to get over on them in order to, stay ahead. And so people can get very selfish with this energy, and they can display all types of behavior that, that where they're trying to take advantage of others. And this can really, or play out on the social scale again too, because Jupiter's a social planet. So we have to be really aware of that. And then, and we have to be aware of people who may be trying to do that to us, or institutions that are trying to do that to us. But, also, this can fire up people who already have kind of antisocial inclinations to, kind of get really out there and act kind of really crazy and act like bent out of shape, basically at the bends of the nose, and really, get into some really antisocial kind of behavior and contacts with others. So be aware of that too, especially if you or others have a proclivity for that, this is energy that can really trigger that kind of behavior. And then the other huge shift, I don't have it on the board, is May 24th, when Saturn goes into Aries. It will be in Aries only till September 2nd. When it goes retrograde, it's actually going to go back into Pisces for 5 months again. So on an individual level, Saturn going into Aries, just like Venus going into Aries, it's a sign it is traditionally weak in. Saturn is in fall in Aries because on an Saturn really feels like relationships and individuality is being really tested when it goes into Aries. All like relationships can be very challenging when Saturn's in Aries. All of them can be, even good ones can be. It can be very difficult to find harmony in relationships while Saturn is in Aries, even with the people that you normally do have to. And a lot of it is because of fear. Saturn can trigger fears, even if we're not conscious of that, of being controlled by other people. So we may like really move away from other people, even people that we love, because we have this feeling that they're trying to control us or that there's an imbalance in the relationship. It's too much giving or too much taking, that kind of thing. And, you know, like I said, Saturn in Libra likes relationships in balance, in harmony, in a flow with each other. And Saturn in Aries, there's a complete imbalance going on. So many of us will actually want to be more independent, want to be more alone because of what we're seeing going on in reality. Even if we are starving for more human contact, we may make this choice of like, hey, this is a couple years where I really need to just, you know, be more alone and independent in where I'm at, and really kind of like once again be the person I am and find the person who accept me on that level. Now, one of the things too about this with Saturn in the Aries is we can get very um, critical too of others or situations or whatever. And really, what we want to do is be self-critical, you know, because the other when we're criticizing others, you're going to get just defensive posturing, especially with Saturn in Aries, where everything is already out of balance. So, like, really, what you should be doing is being self-critical about stuff, and or asking for constructive criticism from someone that you actually really test, or I mean, you really trust. Um, but it is a time where, you know, we can feel like we're not getting support, you know, like that we're not getting the support that we normally want. And we can be really triggered about what others may be doing, authorities or people around us trying to control us. And we have to look a lot of times, once again, that can be a reaction to energy that we've had in the past. So, you know, so once again, if we can find people we trust and get some advice from them, we might be able to find through some other aspect of looking at us, through an outside aspect of things that we need to shore up to make things better in the structure of our lives and in relationships with others. But, you know, Saturn in Aries has us move forward very cautiously. Even though Aries is an energy that wants to initiate, Saturn is going to want to slow down. It wants a roadmap, you know, of where it's going first. It wants to have a plan. It wants to see that the energy that Aries is initiating has some form or structure that it can lock into, is a good way to say it, before it moves forward. You know, basically, definitely wants a plan for a journey, for the journey. Um, and you know, when you think about Saturn too, and like I said, you can go back to the annual. I'll do more of this. I go into more detail on this, but with it being a social planet and with it representing authorities, once again in Aries, it can show that a lot of authorities moves, a lot of what they're doing to institutions is too quick and too insensitive and can cause great trouble and turmoil in society. And we can see that playing out in the United States again, where many of the forms of the government are under attack by the new administration, you know. So there's a lot of energy that's going to go on for the next 2.5, 3 years, where while Saturn is in Aries. And like I said, it'll be really interesting to see how people are going to react to this, you know, because there can be a lot of criticism that comes up. There'll be a lot of difficulty in relationships, and therefore people can really be out of balance with each other. And it can be really difficult to get along both individually and socially with each other under this energy. And it really is about like taking that energy back into ourselves and being critical about ourselves first before we start bringing that out onto others, you know. But this will be really interesting to watch. Like I said, go back to the annual blog. I get, if you haven't checked it out, I get more into detail with all of that. So that's what I got for this week and this month. Next week, the biggest thing going on next week is actually Mercury is going to be changing signs. It's finally going to get out of the Aries zone and go on into Taurus. And we actually don't have the full moon next week. That's not until the week after. Still, it's gonna so we don't so it's gonna be mainly some Mercury stuff I'll be talking about next week. All right, this is Matt Lawton. This is the Astrological Wings channel. Now, if you're interested in a reading, hold on. Go and check the website out, www.astrologicalwinds.com. And that's where I have all the different kind of readings I do. I've been a professional astrologer for 23 years doing readings. I had 7 years of formal training before that. So if you're looking for your birth chart, which never leaves you, you need to have that done right away, professionally, not by a computer, not by a friend with a book. Get a real professional to do it. It really gives you a holistic viewpoint rather than a bunch of information that doesn't make sense. And I really recommend you get a predictive reading every year around your birthday. It's just like this blog where I give you a reading for your year ahead so you know the energies you're working with. Relationship charts, if you're wondering how you got into a relationship or where it's going. Children's charts. Horary questions, if you need some answer to a question you can't seem to get an answer to. Elections for when you're looking for the best time for things. Fixed star, deeper soul journey readings. Any kind of particular question that you have, all that stuff. And if you're a group, I do classes, lectures, workshops, mini readings for your group. Check the website out for all that. I'm also forming a beginner's class right now. That will be a live class. So if you're interested in that, let me know. There are beginners classes available on podcasts too. All that stuff's on the website. If you'd like to give a monetary currency donation to the blog, it does cost me money to put it out. My Cash App is $Matthew with 2 T's, Lawton, Lauten, all one word. Venmo is at Matthew-Lawton, Lauten. No amount is too small. Even $5 is fine. It all helps me out. And remember, the thing I really want you to do is pass the blog along. It's the way I get it to grow. Feel free to comment on the end if you want, and like I said, when you're ready for that reading, please check out my services. Would love to do that for you. All right, until next week, that's what we've got going on. And we'll look into that Mercury energy next week, going into Taurus and doing some other aspects. This is Matt Lawton. This is the Astrological Winds channel.